Hi there, this is Amy Ruff. I'm going to take you through my paper writing workshop. This is for any students of mine who have to write a longer paper on literature. It may also be for middle school students who are going to write a research paper for me. So I entitle this outline, which you should have in your hands, the expository paper format. There will be a skeletal outline, which is version 1. It is a short version, very skeletal. And then there is the second version. It is the format in detail. So you should have two versions of the outline, one being the skeletal, the other being in detail. I'm going to work initially out of the skeletal outline, do an overview, and then we'll go back in and do a more detailed exposure of this process of writing. Okay, initially you see Roman numerals. So I will get your eyeballs on the Roman numerals. There's 1, Roman numeral 2, 3, Roman numeral 4, Roman numeral 5. So I'm confining my teaching to an intro paragraph, 1, 2, 3 body paragraphs, and then a conclusion paragraph. Can your paper have more than 3 body paragraphs? Yes, it can. And in that case, it would extend beyond the boundary of a 5-paragraph essay. In many cases, you might only have 2 body paragraphs. This can be a very complete covering of your literary analysis or your research topic. So, minimum intro paragraph, 2 body paragraphs, conclusion paragraph. Minimum is 4 paragraphs in this longer paper. Very commonly 5 paragraphs because you're having 3 body paragraphs. And then beyond that, you may multiply the number of body paragraphs and the paper will grow. So, looking at Roman numeral 1, this is the intro paragraph. The intro paragraph has 3 ingredients. First of all, letter A, the thesis. Secondly, the explanation. And third is the plan of attack. Your body paragraph begins with a topic sentence and then has a combination, these pairs, evidence plus persuasion. Another pair, evidence wrapped in persuasion, which is the way I prefer to phrase it. So your body paragraph, topic sentence, evidence wrapped in persuasion, evidence wrapped in persuasion. Should we pause? Okay, we'll pause. Hi there, this is Amy Ruff again, and we're looking now at Roman numeral 1 specifically, the introductory paragraph. There are 3 ingredients in the introductory paragraph: thesis, explanation, plan of attack. The thesis in a paper that is written for me, where I'm training students to write a longer analytical or research paper, the thesis should be placed at the beginning of the introductory paragraph. It is a single sentence, and it creates for the reader a very lucid sense of what the paper will argue. In that single statement, it asserts the arguable, analytical angle of the paper. One sentence, we call it a thesis. The next element of the introductory paragraph is the explanation. The explanation is a collection of sentences. It can be as few as 3 sentences. Those would be probably pretty complex sentences with quite a bit of information. Up to 5. If it got to be 7 sentences long, then there's a good chance the intro paragraph will become too large. So I write a range, the explanation being from 3 to 5 sentences long. And the explanation does just that. It explains the paper's topic. We'll go into more details about it in a minute. The third element of the introductory paragraph is the plan of attack. I call it the POA. and I'll always abbreviate in that way, the plan of attack, POA. It is a single sentence. It is placed at the end of the introductory paragraph. So the POA is, in essence, a restating of the thesis, but it goes into more detail about what the body paragraphs will cover. So it takes the reader on a very mini journey. It's like a mini map of what will be covered in the body paragraphs. So 3 elements in the introductory paragraph. Thesis is a single sentence. Explanation is a combination of sentences. And the plan of attack, another single sentence to close that introductory paragraph. Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4, and so on. These are dedicated to the body paragraphs. In each body paragraph, you must begin with a very focused and a very clear topic sentence. Obviously, topic sentence is something students are familiar with from a young age when they learn to write. And it doesn't differ from the normal definition that you're comfortable with, except in this regard, a topic sentence in an analytical paper that's arguing a thesis. The topic sentence must assert or further the argument. The topic sentence must refer back to the thesis and add to the thesis the specific focus of that body paragraph. We'll go into detail about it, but the topic sentence is more than the simplicity of what the paragraph's about. It's actually very maturely linking the thesis with that body paragraph. The other elements in the body paragraph are evidence, and that evidence is wrapped in persuasion. So evidence and persuasion, evidence and persuasion. Everywhere you place a piece of evidence, a quote from a piece of literature, a paraphrase of something that happened in the literature, every piece of evidence is wrapped in your persuasive words. And we'll go into further detail about that. You end each body paragraph with a conclusion sentence. This is a transitional sentence. It's important, but you don't want to belabor it. It's not the central weight of the body paragraph. That is found in the topic sentence and the evidence and persuasion. Conclusion, you create that sentence, you transition to your next body paragraph, and that's when you rinse and repeat. You recreate another body paragraph with topic sentence, evidence wrapped in persuasion, evidence wrapped in persuasion. You can have up to 3 pieces of evidence, not less than 2 pieces of evidence per body paragraph. 3, if each one of those has the proper persuasive wrapping, 3 pieces of evidence plus 3 persuasive sentences, you've got 6 sentences there. Add a topic sentence and a conclusion sentence, 6 plus 1 and 1, that's 8 sentences. That is a plenty long body paragraph. So you need to be careful to control the length of your body paragraphs so that unit doesn't grow to ginormous proportions. Okay, the conclusion paragraph. Conclusion paragraphs summarize your argument, but that is not their only focus. This is your opportunity to summarize tersely the paper's argument, but more importantly, you get to creatively go somewhere else with your analysis. And what I mean by that, you may draw further conclusions about your subject matter. It's almost like a moment when you can philosophize or sermonize. You wax eloquently on your subject, and you take the reader to a bit of a different destination before closing out your paper finally. It's a very, very important part of the paper. It's not essential to the argument of the paper, but it does show the skill you have in writing because you go to a next level. in your writing. All right, I want you to make sure in that first page of the skeletal outline, you saw on a single side of paper everything that I was covering just now. When you turn the page, the skeletal outline is extended. And what I've done, I've created space. You have this document electronically. There is space for you to type into this skeleton the different elements of your paper. So, the introductory paragraph elements, the body paragraph elements, and so on. And when you take advantage of that, you'll learn to rehearse the method, the structural method. And in following the structure, your paper will be written in no time. If you just launch out without structure, you can get lost, just lost at sea. Okay, so I'm not going to dwell on that extended skeletal. It's for your use. It is a tool. But what I'm going to focus on now is the expository paper format outline in detail. So this is the detailed outline. This could take days to read. And if you're going to read it, you'll really want to be fresh, because there's information that is quite examples, they're quite dense, they're quite mature, but we're going to touch on them as much as we can. You have to adapt all this structural teaching to the paper topic you're focusing on. So if you're in American literature, perhaps it's a paper on Scarlet Letter. If you're in middle school composition, perhaps it's a paper researching dogs and arguing why they deserve the title man's best friend. If you're in British literature, perhaps you're arguing a thesis about Milton's Paradise Lost, and it's a profound analysis of that epic. Or if it's Western literature, and a lot of my examples are actually from my Western literature course, you might be arguing something very intense about the vengeance-filled family line of the Orestia. And we won't go into that. But depending on your topic, your subject of literature, your subject of research, you will adapt this structure to place into the structure the information that pertains to your argument. Okay, so looking at the detail, it's quite dense. It's typed, single-spaced. This is dense. Let's march through it. The thesis. So once again, we're back to the introductory paragraph. You have thesis, single sentence. Explanation, 3 to 5 sentences. Plan of attack, POA, single sentence. So that's your intro paragraph. Thesis, explanation, plan of attack. Okay, the thesis. It is definitely one sentence. I prefer for it to be at the beginning of the intro paragraph. In training my students, I don't want them to come in a back door or a side door with their argument. I want my students to hit the reader between the eyes immediately with their thesis. The thesis is essential. It's like the head of the arrow, and it needs to go out with strength and force immediately. Therefore, the reader knows just what you are intending to argue, because your thesis asserts your argument. It must contain, so this is under letter A, number 1, what it must contain. The topic or subject, dogs, or if it's a piece of literature, it's definitely going to tell the reader the literary title. If it's a poem, if it's an epic, if it's a novel, the title, the author has to be stated. So this is where it gets to be complex. And of course, it's going to, and this is item number 2, in the statement, it's going to clearly assert your argument. It's terse, doesn't meander. It must have a strong verb. In other words, weak verbs. The to be verbs, no. The have verbs, no. Helper verbs, no. None of those may be present. You know, you've got 500,000 words in English to choose from. Go ahead and take your pick. Find a strong verb. The only forbidden categories, to be verb, to have verb, helper verbs. None of that. Boldly use a strong verb in your thesis. Must. It's a must. Here's an example. This is number 3 of a thesis. It's analyzing hubris, extreme pride, overweening pride, in Aeschylus's Orestia. Here's the thesis. In Aeschylus's Orestia, Clytemnestra, Agamemnon, and Orestes manifest degrees of hubris which correspond with the respective tragedy in each character's life. So the argument is the tragedy level is commensurate, it's on the same level as the pride level in those 3 characters, Clytemnestra, Orestes, and Agamemnon. I focused on those 3. So you have a husband, a wife, and a son. How proud are they? Well, their pride level is commensurate with the tragedy level that they experience. That's the argument. And it must be proven throughout the paper. But do I have these ingredients? Do I have the topic? It's the literary work. Who wrote it? Aeschylus wrote Orestia. Do I have my focus of analysis? These 3 characters. And about them, what are we arguing, analyzing? Hubris. And furthermore, are we just analyzing hubris? No, we're actually arguing that the hubris level is commensurate with the level of tragedy. So you can see how a thesis, that's quite a mature thesis, a thesis has weight. It's heavy. It's big. That's a good sample of a thesis. I have some other samples. The next one is about Medea. She's the protagonist in Euripides' Medea. The next one is a middle school essay on mammals, horses. My son wrote this. Fascinated by horses, so he did his research paper on horses, and he was asserting, arguing, that horses embody the broadest combination of physical characteristics of any mammal. Now, could somebody disagree and argue otherwise for another animal? Sure. But you get to choose your argument, your path. And then you have to, what? Prove it to the reader. That's what you're doing. Asserting your argument. I do have a kind of lighter thesis in literature, and it's number 6. It's about Johnny Tremain, which a lot of people have read. And it's a very nice one that if you visit that one, maybe you can wrap your brain around it a little more easily than those from Western literature, Euripides and Aeschylus. Letter B, under Roman numeral 1. This is the explanation. Okay, so these explanation sentences, what do we include in the explanation sentences? Number 1, you must have an intentional education of the reader. So, I am intentionally educating the reader on what? Okay. If there's an historical element in your paper, some historical context. If it is a literary analysis, a terse plot summary. If there is one particular literary term that is tantamount to your argument, such as hubris in the earlier thesis that I stated, well, you will define that literary term. You'll flesh out your thesis in various ways through these explanation sentences so that the reader is educated. The reader has understanding enough to venture into your argument and be able to grasp what you're trying to convince them of. I don't think I need to explain any more about the explanation sentences. There are some samples there, but those are the high notes, the POA. Plan of attack now. This is letter C. It is the last sentence in the introductory paragraph. In essence, it restates your thesis. However, it is not simply or merely a restatement of the thesis. In creatively restating your thesis, so not literally repeating it, but a creative restatement, you will add Now, I'm using this word, quote unquote, loosely. You will add a list of the body paragraph items, of the focus points of your body paragraphs. So your POA, your plan of attack, will list the body paragraph angles of an argument. I do not want you to think it's an immature list. It definitely doesn't revert to first-person pronouns. I will argue that. My body paragraphs cover. No such thing in a mature literary analysis. No way. So you really do need to look at the examples of POA sentences because you've got to become skilled to actually write a mature plan of attack. Sometimes you'll create a version of the plan of attack, and as you move into the body paragraphs, you realize, oh my goodness, my argument has grown. I'm actually also going to visit this angle in fully arguing for my thesis. So you'll embellish, you'll enhance, you'll recreate your POA with this additional element. Let me just read this example of a POA. Such hubris, now, you know, the POA has come after other sentences. Such hubris fertilizes the self-destructive soil of Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, and Orestes' hearts, bearing death within each character and across the family line. Okay, so restating the thesis, hubris brings about tragedy. What did we call another way to say tragedy? We've got self-destructive soil, that's tragic. We've got death, that's tragic. And then we state, now this is in order, I will visit Agamemnon in body paragraph number 1. I will visit Clytemnestra in body paragraph number 2. I will visit Orestes in body paragraph number 3. And you must do that. You must have the successive order literally reflect the body paragraph order from your plan of attack reflecting your body paragraphs. Okay, so this is Roman numerals in the detailed outline. This is Roman numerals 2 through 6. So body paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're going up to 6, it's possible you'll have 4 body paragraphs. So, you know, I'm not telling you a minimum for sure of 2 body paragraphs. 3 is often an adequate number of body paragraphs. And if you're a mature student, you might write more than 3 body paragraphs. Okay, what do these contain? Letter A, the topic sentence. It's at the beginning of each body paragraph. It introduces the paragraph's argumentative focus. So you don't want to just jump into evidence. You need this unifying topic sentence. It must, as the thesis in the intro paragraph, your topic sentence at the beginning of each body paragraph must also have a strong verb. I don't need to go into detail. Basically, none of the weak verb, to be, to have, helpers. None of that. Use a collection of strong verbs. I'm going to give you a sample of a topic sentence. This is the King Agamemnon paragraph, body paragraph. King Agamemnon's decision to defeat Troy at any personal cost augments the degree of hubris naturally inherent in an ancient Greek king. So, this king, Agamemnon, said, I'll do anything to go to war, to win the war. So he actually sacrifices his own daughter to get the gods to give them some wind for the Greek fleet to sail. This is horrifying to think about. So is there a tragic element? Yes. Did hubris motivate him? Hubris, pride to win? Yes. There's a lot of other character flaws there as well. But you can see the topic sentence has a strong focus, it has a strong verb, and then you launch into your evidence with persuasion. So, First piece of evidence, it could be a juicy quote, it could be an excellent paraphrasing, and you will present that to the reader, but then the persuasive wrapping involves telling the reader why I picked that piece of evidence, how that piece of evidence relates to my argument, how this body paragraph with this piece of evidence furthers my argument in favor of my thesis. So you're arguing, you're trying to convince. You can't just state, for instance, Agamemnon sacrifices Iphigenia. You just state that. Okay, that's a piece of evidence. Well, who's she? Why? Here's the persuasion. Why is it important to know something about what does sacrificing your daughter have to do with hubris level is commensurate with tragedy level? Well, it's kind of obvious, but you still have to state it for the reader. You do not assume this is obvious. The reader will presume, the reader will fill in the blank. You supply the persuasion for the reader. Okay, so here it is. When a great king chooses to sacrifice his own daughter for the cause of winning a war, one presumably expects great grief and much upheaval in his household. And that's what happened. His wife kills him when he gets home because she's so angry. And I'm sure he was grieving over what he was doing, unless he was totally heartless. So he's experiencing tragedy. His wife's experiencing tragedy. He's going to get the ultimate tragedy of, like, I'm going to kill you because you did that, killed our daughter. It's a mess. It's a bloodbath. So you see how a piece of evidence, while it might be screaming to you the reason why you included it, you do not make the reader supply the persuasion. You wrap that piece of evidence in your own persuasive words. Okay, you're going to rinse and repeat. Do this over and over again in your body paragraphs. Each one has a focus of argument to further your thesis. You'll put evidence wrapped in persuasion. I expect at least 2 pieces of evidence per body paragraph. You have to properly cite quotations, which is a different teaching. I'm not going into that now. This is all about the content structure. Let's now briefly talk about the conclusion sentence of each body paragraph. It will somewhat summarize what that body paragraph was arguing. However, the most excellent conclusion sentence will offer a transition into the next body paragraph. This is when you become skilled. When you're this skilled, you really know how to wield your words, how to manipulate the English language to accomplish your purpose. And so your conclusion sentence will be a form of a bridge into the next body paragraph. And I'm not going to repeat over and over again. We've gone over what body paragraphs are about. We're almost done. Conclusion paragraph. The conclusion paragraph, yes, it does summarize your thesis, revisit in a terse way the evidence, the persuasion, the high notes of your argument. But more importantly, you learn how to step back and philosophize about your subject. For perhaps this whole subject of hubris, you might say things like the blinding quality of pride. It can literally blind a person about their very emotions, like a father attached to his daughter and yet able to quench that emotional attachment for a proud aspiration of winning a war. That's called blinding pride. It can also maybe diffuse the logic, the reasoning capacity of a person. So if I kill my daughter, isn't this going to put a wedge between me and my wife? Duh, of course it is. So that could be a reason. If you're so dense and you need a reason not to kill your daughter, that's a good reason. So there's this blinding quality about pride. It's almost like you can get so proud you're inducing a mental illness where you're totally altered of mind, as Agamemnon, in my opinion, you might argue, as he was. Also sermonizing. So you have a moment where you could offer a little advice, a little moral eloquence, waxing eloquently on why in the big picture a certain path might be the better path to choose. And so sermonizing there is a little bit of perhaps exhortation is a good word. You're exhorting the reader to learn from the error of others. Now this is assuming your analysis might have had this negative quality. Sometimes you'll be arguing something that's quite positive. Perhaps that research paper on the horses, something quite positive, dogs being man's best friend. And so when you get to the conclusion, there are such sweet and positive ways to philosophize, to sermonize, and so forth. Okay, I'm basically done, and I would say to you, if you have questions, the first step is to go back through this outline. Perhaps without the video on, because you might find, okay, if I read this slowly, I will get it on a certain level. And then maybe another thing to do is to go back to this video and watch it again. Having slowly read through the outlines, you'll probably get my teaching on the video at a whole new level. And you'll be loaded up, you'll be ready to go, and I know you'll write a great paper. Thank you.